Avengers Endgame is just around the corner, and with it, the ending of a story that I have been following since the very beginning for 10 years now. This has been such a massive achievement of so many great films, and I've been thinking about which one was my favorite. One film has consistently risen above the others, and I want to tell you about why. This video is about why Captain America: Civil War is my favorite superhero film of all time. But first, a prelude. One time I was sat down for breakfast with my stepdad, and he told me the story of the first time he saw Star Wars. And it really got me thinking about what kind of media I've lived through. Honestly, if I have an equivalent to the magnitude of Star Wars' impact, I think it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I remember so clearly what it felt like to stand in line on opening night of the Avengers, and that collective gasp and shocked silence when Thanos did the thing. It's mind-blowing that this thing is as good as it is. I understand if it's not your cup of tea, but the fact that a Marvel Cinematic Universe even exists is something worth celebrating. Popular media deserves to be analyzed. We gotta figure out why it's popular and what that says about us as a culture. So probably the biggest achievement that Marvel has made with these films is cultivating a really strong relationship between the audience and its characters. That relationship is probably the most valuable thing that they'll ever have. It's the kind of thing that creates lifelong fans and who will forever buy their products and give them money. Thor coming down to Wakanda wouldn't have been such a celebrated moment to mainstream audiences if they didn't have an established connection with those characters. Like, what the fuck? It's literally a raccoon and a tree. So, Captain America: Civil War. I love this movie because it works. It feels like such a natural progression for the characters and the world that they inhabit. And this self-contained story is told in a way that's super enhanced by the fact that it's in a bigger universe. And for a superhero film, it's quite a small scale story. Yeah, I know Ant-Man literally grows 100 feet tall. If I was to sum up what the story of this film is about, it's basically a really loud political dispute between coworkers, followed by 3 guys in a bar fight. But besides the obviously kick-ass action, it's my favorite because the story is so good, and I've narrowed it down to 3 reasons why. 1, it's got a super unique protagonist. 2, it takes the hero of the last 5 movies and makes him the antagonist somehow. And finally, I think it's got a really powerful message. I think the Russo brothers managed to sneak in a super topical theme and poignant message about society that kind of went over people's heads at the time. And we're gonna get to that. But first, let's start with that second point, because what? Number 2, that's right, we're starting with number 2. This movie didn't do what I thought it was gonna do. I thought this film was gonna pit 2 equally valid sides against each other and kind of have the audience decide which was more right and make it all morally ambiguous. And then just maybe end it in a stalemate like most superhero fights. But the more I watch Civil War, the more I start to notice that the movie doesn't do that. It actually takes a side. So let's recap the plot. The United Nations is sick of the Avengers. They've been making too many mistakes and costing innocent people's lives, and they're sick of cleaning up the mess. So they decide to pass some legislation to make it so that the Avengers operate under the United Nations. They take orders from the government. And this would also make it illegal to be a superhero without being signed under these accords. Captain America is framed in between Rhodey and Falcon as they debate both sides of the issue because he's deliberating. It's a nice visual storytelling beat. Tony Stark thinks this is a really good idea because members on the team are basically nuclear weapons and they need to be put in check. And if they absolve all their responsibility and give it to the government, then they are doing their job of protecting humanity by taking orders from the elected officials that govern the people they're trying to protect. Captain America, though, is not really having it. For one thing, bureaucratic decision making is slow as shit. If the world's about to end and the board takes too long to make a decision, innocent people could die under their noses. More importantly, what about corruption? Humanity has a habit of electing really shady people sometimes.
But it's run by people with agendas, and agendas change. What if this panel sends us somewhere we don't think we should go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us?
This is a really valid political debate, and it's super interesting to see superheroes talk about politics. Unfortunately, they don't all agree and end up taking sides. When Captain America uncovers an evil plot and then decides to do some illegal superheroing, Tony Stark's gotta take him down. This eventually leads to a giant clash in an airport and the coolest fight scene of all time. I love this so much. I've had conversations with friends who say, oh, I think Tony Stark is right. Oh, I think Captain America is right. But ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you definitively that the movie itself sides with Captain America. I mean, it's pretty obvious, actually, now that I think about it. The movie's called Captain America. It's very clearly a Captain America story, and he wins in the end. But following that logic, the villain of the story isn't actually Baron Zemo. The villain is Tony Stark. You see, the writers, or should I say gods, realized that if they were going to adapt a story as crazy and huge as Civil War, they really needed to ground it with a central main character, Captain America. And with that shift of focus comes a shift of the opposing party. By logic of the story's construction, Tony Stark has to be the antagonist to challenge the protagonist on his journey in all the ways that a screenplay demands. Baron Zemo is just a plot device. He may be the mastermind behind all of this with a great backstory and motivation, but the focus of the conflict in the story is between Tony Stark and Captain America. So just as you think they're gonna cop out and have them team up to fight the Winter Soldier 2.0s, they actually commit to making Tony Stark the final showdown. They took arguably the main character of the last 5 movies and they made him the final boss. That's fucking wild. So what makes Tony Stark not just the antagonist, but a great one? Well, like all great villains, Iron Man's motivation isn't malevolent, it's just a misguided attempt to try and do the right thing. Villains don't think they're the villain, everyone's the hero of their own story. Let's look back at Killmonger from Black Panther. No one could argue that he's wrong to say—
It's about 2 billion people all over the world that looks like us, but their lives are a lot harder. Wakanda has the tools to liberate them all.
But the reason he's the villain of that story is because the methods he wants to use to change the world and make it a better place, it's wrong. Tony Stark may have a really good point for why he wants to give up responsibility of being a superhero to the United Nations, but in the end, he's shown to have the wrong idea. He loses. But we can't just go, oh look, he loses, therefore he's wrong. Let's think about why he loses. Tony's trying to stop any innocent people from getting hurt from the powerful forces within his control. Gotta say, that's some really strong and believable character progression. Just like how he shut down weapons manufacturing at Stark Industries, but now these weapons are people and have feelings.
That's why I'm here. When I realized what my weapons were capable of in the wrong hands, I shut it down, stopped manufacturing.
And that's a really valid political stance. He's not wrong because the Accords are wrong. Tony's mistake is that he's come to his decision for the wrong reasons. Captain America arrives at his decision after a long time spent thinking about what he believes in. Is this really the right thing to do? In the end, he genuinely believes in his heart of hearts that the Accords are a bad idea.
I'm sorry, Ned. I can't sign it.
But Tony's only acting this way for one reason. One little emotion that drives him the entire film and leads him to his downfall. Guilt. Right before this conversation happens, he is confronted by a woman who lost her son in Sokovia during Age of Ultron.
He's dead, and I blame you.
This is a massive blow on Tony. He feels so guilty that he wants to sign away his freedom to help others to shift the blame away from him.
This document just shifts the blame.
As much as he tries to convince himself, he is not acting out of the good of his heart, but out of a guilty conscience. It's borderline selfish of him to want to absolve all responsibility for his actions.
They say there's a correlation between generosity and guilt. But if you got the money.
Captain America's motivations for his decision are all noble, but Tony's are emotional and reactive. They come from a negative headspace, and that's the difference here. Not even to mention that the entire final showdown is happening because Tony's trying to commit murder, but he's not making these decisions with a level head. He's making these decisions because he's in pain. Pain that the Russo brothers actually visualize with the increasing amount of injuries Tony incurs throughout the film.
My left arm is numb. Is that normal?
Until he's left covered in his own blood. And this pain causes him to make some really bad decisions. One often overlooked scene that I think lays this out really nicely is Tony's recruitment of Spider-Man. It's a really fun scene that introduces Tom Holland as Peter Parker, but it's got a lot going on from a character perspective. Tony takes the time to ask Peter why he's Spider-Man, and Peter says this.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
Now, given what we know about the debate of the Sokovia Accords, Peter Parker is showing that he is way more on Captain America's side, philosophically.
If someone dies on your watch, you don't give up.
Who said we're giving up?
We are for not taking responsibility for our actions.
In fact, he's kind of showing a bit more maturity than Tony by taking responsibility for his actions. And at this point, Tony Stark has a moment of self-awareness. You can see it on his face. This means he has to trick Peter into fighting on his side. You can tell he kind of feels guilty about it, but he chooses to ignore it.
Kid, there's a lot going on here that you don't understand.
Stark says you'd say that.
Stark tell you anything else?
That you're wrong, you think you're right, that makes you dangerous.
But enough about our bad guy. Let's talk about our big boy! Captain America's a fucking weird protagonist. See, most of the time a main character in a story has to, somewhere along the line, learn to be more something. Whether it be more brave, more generous, compassionate, whatever. But the writers have gone on record saying Captain America doesn't change. There's nothing really wrong with him. That's the nature of his character. He's such a good person, and that's what makes him a superhero. The conflict in his stories comes from the world around him changing. This is actually really subversive of traditional screenwriting theory, and it makes this movie really unique and interesting. Cap doesn't win because he's learned his lesson. He wins because he refuses to change. He knows what's right and he fights for it till the bitter end. This refusal to change is in heavy contrast to Tony Stark, who is constantly learning lessons through all of his movies and trying to be a better person. It's a really fascinating dynamic.
Give me a break!
Let's think about this movie as a conclusion to the Captain America trilogy. Cap's journey is a really depressing one. His determination to stick to his moral beliefs has cost him friends, family, and any sense of belonging. In every film, he has to leave the organization that he's part of because he realizes that these organizations can't keep up with his moral code. He goes rogue in the army, he ends up destroying S.H.I.E.L.D., and in this film, he breaks up the Avengers. He doesn't believe in the systems themselves, he believes in the people in those systems.
My faith's in people, I guess. Individuals.
When Tony sides with a system that he's deemed to be morally compromised, they have to fight.
We fight.
That's why this single story benefits by being part of a cinematic universe. Iron Man has been on a long journey over 5 movies, learning that he needs to be more responsible. And Captain America's journey has been teaching him to distrust the system. The natural progression of these two trajectories leads to conflict. It's almost like they've been setting it up this whole time. It's remarkably more nuanced writing than I would ever expect from a superhero movie. It's committed, it's real, it's true to the character. It's not a contrived conflict, and that blows my mind. So let's cut to the ending. Cap and Bucky hike it up to Siberia to try and stop Baron Zemo's evil army of more super soldiers. Iron Man follows them and they strike a truce while they go to stop Zemo together, only to find out that Zemo has already killed the super soldiers and was leading them into a trap. The trap being playing some security footage to Tony showing that Bucky killed Tony's parents. Yikes. And the real nail in the coffin is finding out that Captain America knew and didn't tell him. Tony completely loses it. And the final showdown happens because Tony Stark is trying to murder Bucky, and Captain America trying to stop him. I want to commend the writers for making this a purely emotionally driven conflict. Tony and Steve punching each other in the face doesn't come from a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a post-it note stuck on the Avengers fridge. It comes from the genuine emotional reaction of each character's complete, valid understanding of the situation. Tony just found out that Cap was keeping the secret that his best friend killed Tony's parents. That's fucking brutal. So you couldn't really throw in a third character to jump in between them and say, oh, it's all a misunderstanding. They're just emotional ass men hashing something out.
I don't care. He killed my mom.
It's such a heavy character beat that feels like it's been led up to. And that's by design. This is Tony's reactive mindset taken to its extreme. He's not thinking about the morality of his actions. He finally has someone to blame for not having the chance to make amends to his parents. Years of pent-up guilt for not giving his mom and dad a loving goodbye on the last day that they were alive comes out in a blind rage. They trade blows back and forth, and eventually Bucky gets incapacitated. Tony gets the upper hand, and Captain America falls to his knees. He pleads one more time, and Iron Man has to knock him down again. But Cap stands up again. And just like he said to that bully in 1942,
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
he says to Tony,
I could do this all day.
despite all of his attempts and desires to do the right thing, Tony Stark has become a bully. Fuck me, this movie's good. Bucky grabs his leg with the power of friendship, then Tony Stark makes one last emotional decision. He's got Captain America on the ropes. He could finish him off right now, but he decides to turn around and kick Bucky in the head, leaving him open for Cap to grab him. Cap's pinned him down, and Tony thinks he's about to kill him, but Steve Rogers proves he's the better man. The end. There's tons of think pieces about Tony Stark's arc throughout the whole MCU, so why am I even talking about this? Well, that leads back to number 3. Number 3! Oh, I forgot to say number 1. Jeez. What can we learn from this? The greatest films that exist all have messages and themes. They ask questions about humanity to try and figure out the human condition. And after maybe 20 times of watching Civil War, I think this film is trying to be part of the conversation. I think it's striving for something greater and it's trying to challenge us as an audience. Make the world a better place while also being a piece of entertainment. And to sum it up, I think that question is, where do your beliefs come from? This film has a lot of political themes, and while I guess you could argue that because Cap wins that the filmmakers are saying that individual liberty is better than governmental control, but I don't think that's why he wins in the end. The problem with Tony is that his actions come from an emotional reaction. Tony's journey is a cautionary tale to teach the audience that decisions you make while you're in a negative headspace can be dangerous. Where do your beliefs come from? Are you really trying to do things for the right reason? If you're making a choice out of anger or guilt or fear, no matter how right your side may be, it will cause pain. That's why Cap wins. Tony is fighting out of guilt, anger, revenge, frustration, jealousy, but Cap, he fights for what he believes is right. And that's the end of the story. Tony even admits to Cap that part of the reason he's pushing so hard for the Accords is to fix his relationship.
I don't want to lose her. I thought maybe the Accords could split the difference.
Several times, Tony is struck with a moment of self-realization where he realizes he might be doing the wrong thing, the last of which being at the end of the movie. He's covered in blood and he looks as if he's just woken up from blacking out. What just happened? We just tried to kill each other. Tony's actions, while completely empathetic and tragically understandable, are wrong. It's a powerful message that challenges the audience to really think about why they believe what they believe. Does it come purely from your own sense of right and wrong, or does it come from some sort of pain or trauma that you've experienced? The best way to go through life is constantly reevaluating yourself and questioning your deeply held beliefs and whether or not that really is the right thing. We all have to keep growing and striving to be better people, and sometimes that means letting go of something that you once believed.
Vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them. I'm done letting it consume me.
We need to be like Cap. We need to question our own beliefs. We need to challenge the beliefs of our friends. And we need to stand up to bullies. Oh, that got heavy. I think this movie's deeper than people have given it credit for. It takes the time to say something while also somehow juggling 10 different characters. When Avengers Endgame comes out and Tony and Cap are finally reunited, I just want them to hug. However these journeys come to a close, I will always hold this chapter of the story dear to my heart. Boom, there we go, we made it. If you like this video, give it a like and press the subscribe button if you want to see more, and leave a comment below if you want to tell James that you like when I make videos, and then I'll make some more videos. I'm at Ben Chinnapen on Twitter. Thanks for watching this. Have a good day.